In the name of one God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. The other day, a colleague and I were walking along and catching up a little bit, and we started talking about our sermons from last week. You know, last week was the feeding of the 5,000 with the loaves and the fishes, and it's such a memorable story in the Gospels that it's sort of fun with your colleagues to see how they took it, what direction they went in. So I told him about my sermon from last week, kind of giving him the highlights. You remember what I said, right? Let me recap. I had when I was born, I was given this amazing bottle of wine, and it was given to me sort of as I turned 21. And so some years later, I had the opportunity with this 20-something-year-old bottle of wine to share it with some friends who I lived with, who were very close to me, who were moving out of town finally. It made, that bottle of wine, made for a transcendent evening with these friends as they departed. The meal was great, the wine made it even better. But in reflecting on that evening, I realized that as amazing as it was to have 20-whatever-year-old wine, the meal was amazing for a different reason. It wasn't about the food, it was about the people. And as I reflected on all the various meals that I had had over my life, I found that to be consistently true. The wonderful, wonderful moments had artful, exceptional, satisfying food, but the satisfaction really didn't come from the food, it came from the people. And then, of course, that connected directly with the feeding of the 5,000. Jesus satisfied people with the bread and the fish, but really he was the source of the satisfaction. So even then, it wasn't about the food, it was about the people. So my friend sort of heard my synopsis and scratched his chin a little bit and said, yeah, I get what you're saying. I hear that. But sometimes I sit down and I'm so hungry and the food looks so good, and I don't want to talk to anybody in that moment. I want to focus on the food. It's like when you're at Thanksgiving and maybe there are some relatives you don't want to talk to, and all you want to do is enjoy the gravy and the potatoes and the turkey. And thinking about what my friend said in looking for the key to today's text, it's going to sound strange, but here it is. It's not about the people, it's about the food. I was a little bummed out to realize this, of course, because I thought I was pretty clever last week. It's not about the food, it's about the people. But the more I thought about it, the more it really fit. Here's why. For me, the love of people around me feeds me. It is crucial to my care and well-being. But while it is a primary source of nourishment, for me it is not the only source, nor is it the unique source. In fact, people often feed themselves from a variety of things. The food for our souls can be beauty, seeing a stunning sunset or hearing a moving tune. Or we can be fed by justice, knowing that we are doing the right thing or the kind thing. That thing that feeds you can be peace, finding that quietness in your soul and in the world around you. Or it can be the easing of your troubles, the calming salve, or joy, or inspiration. The list goes on and on of things that can feed our spirits, and I'm sure that you can think of more. As we think through this list, though, you may realize that the feeding you get from standing on the ocean and watching a beautiful sunset fades after a while. You might even say that something like that leaves you hungry for more. And in that light, these different bits of food for our souls are really just appetizers for the main course. Let me tell you a story. Stephanie and a friend and I were chaplains at Camp Stevens last week. And at one point, Stephanie was helping some campers make bread for our closing Eucharist. The group of 15 or 16 kids was each making sort of hand-sized loaves. We needed a dozen or a dozen and a half to feed everybody. And as they were shaping it, as they were putting their individual imprint on it, Stephanie was talking to them about how communion was this great meal, this gigantic feast that we celebrate, meant to feed us all. And of course, one of the 10-year-olds piped up, held up his piece of bread and said, "That's not a meal. That's barely enough for a snack." That camper was right, you know. He was echoing what Jesus is saying in today's gospel. Remember, last week Jesus fed the 5,000 with a few loaves and fishes. And so this week Jesus has moved on, and the 5,000 search him out. They were filled by Jesus' food, by the relationships that were started in that moment. But guess what? Like all of us do, they became hungry again. And so they tracked Jesus down looking for more. And he says to them, "You've had this sample, and now you want the whole thing. You've had an appetizer, and now you want the main course." And guess what Jesus says? He says, "I am the main course. I am the bread of life," he says. "And whoever comes to me will never be hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty." Now, I was a little bit right last week. It is about the people. The 5,000 are bound together by their experience of Jesus, by their relationship with him. And they tie themselves in relationship into the whole body of Jesus' followers. They are tied to Jesus as well out of that loving relationship that was created in that meal of bread and fishes. But really, my friend was right, and Stephanie's camper was right as well. Those relationships are just a taste of the real food, the briefest, smallest taste. The miracle of the feeding of the 5,000 awakened a hunger in them. Just a hint of being satisfied helped them become aware of how hungry they really were. Their hunger, sated for just a moment, drove them to Jesus because they thought that Jesus had the food that would satisfy them again. But Jesus was the food that would satisfy them forever. Living a life with Jesus would sate that hunger for good. It would in fact retire that hunger in the end. My friends, we are just like those 5,000. Over and over we can try to satisfy that hunger that we have inside of us with a huge variety of things. Some things like joy and beauty and love might curb our hunger for a little while, but there are other things we try as well that are simply empty calories. In the end, though, nothing can fill our bellies quite like Jesus. Nothing satisfies, nothing quite lasts. So listen to Jesus. He is the food that will never leave you hungry again. He is the beverage that will slake your thirst for good. Take him into you and satisfy yourselves permanently. Because remember, it's not about the people, it's about the food. Amen.